Hey everybody, welcome to Chasing Chantavisuk, my weekly psychotherapy session with myself and a few thousand people listening in, like they're all in a white van outside my apartment. But I got some feedback from last week, so I just wanna double back onto that. A couple of my friends and family from from Rochester, New York, got back to me and goes, "Noy, you're a damn liar, 'cause you didn't do any of that stuff when you were with us." And for that, I gotta say, it's because of this week's episode, this week's theme. And so this is the DLC for last week's episode, a little segment here. So I want to apologize to my friends and my family in Rochester, New York, because you didn't get to party with Noi back in the day. and so when I was in California, I was all by myself. I mean, I had some friends and what have you, but there was no one there to judge me. So I did a ton of crazy things there. Growing up in Rochester, I guess I would say I was a straight edge kid. You know, I didn't do any drugs, I didn't do any drinking, I didn't smoke or anything like that. Then again, I was 18 when I left Rochester, so I didn't get a chance to. And so I had a reputation, as well as my parents having a reputation. It's in an Asian culture, you have, I guess you have what's called saving face. You know, you want to put on a good front. And because of how I was raised, if I were to do something bad, if I did anything bad, if I got a speeding ticket, everybody in the Asian community would know. And so if Noi was out partying, doing drugs, that reflects back onto my parents, which would in return make them look bad. And then I would also make myself look bad. And so when I went to go visit and see my friends and my family, they would offer me, libations. Um, they would pass me a blunt. They would offer me psychotropic drugs, and I would always turn them down, even though secretly in my head I was reaching for it. But because of, again, of the reputation, I had to turn them down, and I used what I refer to as the King Lear method. If you aren't familiar with King Lear, there's a line there that says, "Speak less than you know, have more than you show." And so, as much as I wanted to party, I wasn't going to because, again, of of the reputation. And so when I went back to California, oh God, I doubled down. I had to catch up on all the times that I missed. And so I got that all out of my system. And again, I got clean by the time I left California. And when I got back to Rochester, the only thing I was addicted to was painkillers, which I've already talked about. And so, again, to my Rochester friends and family, I apologize that you didn't get to party with Noi. And so, piggyback off of that, let's move on to this week's episode called Asian Taboos. And so, I'm sure a lot of you already know about certain Asian taboos. Things like, again, saving face. So, growing up in the 80s, everybody, every family member wanted to project that they were successful. And so, coming to America obviously was step one. Step two was generating as much wealth as possible, even if you had to work, two full time jobs, if you had to live with like two, three families in one house just so you can save money. That was a thing. That was considered normal. But as soon as you made it out into the real world, I guess, and started living on your own, this is phase two, I guess would say. You had to show that you were successful, that you can make it on your own. And so you would get a house, step one. You would buy a fancy car. and then you would fill the house with as many expensive and fancy and high tech things as you possibly could, so that when people came over, they would be impressed and they would give you congratulatory, um, generic compliments. And then you would smile and be like, "Yeah, I'm so much better than you," and that's how the game was played. And so families would do this. One guy would buy a Trans Am, for instance. At the time in the '80s, Trans Ams were awesome. It was the Trans Am, it was the Corvette, and it was the Mustang. So those were the hot things back then. And so if a guy would get a Trans Am, then guess what? Somebody else would get a Trans Am, but it would have, I don't know, a cassette player, you know. So you just had to one up each other until eventually you would just be so heavily in debt that you failed. That was it. It was failing upwards. I guess would be the best way to put it. You would be so heavily in debt that you would drop out of the social status, and that was just how the game was played. You had to try to one up each other without killing yourself, and a lot of these people were like, you know, they in the front they looked completely successful. They would have a 3 bedroom house, 2 baths, a big screen TV, which at the time was like 27 inches, and a kick-ass stereo system, which you can sing karaoke on because Asians. And when you went to go visit, everything was great. There was plenty of food in the fridge. There was beer everywhere. There was Hennessy everywhere, and it was just a grandiose party. And then as soon as you left, that family would be like, "All right, we're not eating for a week. We are going to work our asses off, and we're not going to go shopping for a month." Like we would starve for the entire time until it was time to throw another party. And that's just how it was. That was how it was with pretty much every family, my family included. We bought a kick-ass stereo system, which I had no idea how to use. I don't even think my dad knew how to use. And we bought a 27-inch Panasonic TV because my cousins had just bought a 27-inch Panasonic TV. It was the exact same TV, I remember. And then we would have like, big parties where everybody would cook and gambling. And then at the end of the night, my parents would just be so exhausted that they didn't want to do anything else. They didn't clean up until the next day. And then I remember we would go to McDonald's every week. Well, my dad and my mom would take me to McDonald's every week. We didn't get that because we spent so much money on these parties that sometimes we didn't get the cable bill paid. Stupid things like that. But it was very important to maintain your status in the community. And then every now and then you would get a monkey wrench, and it would be very, very hard for these families. But they also had to show again that nothing was wrong. There's a there's a saying in Laos. It's called "bo ben yang," which means no worries. So, and that's basically how I live my life now. But something bad happens, "bo ben yang." Like it's there's nothing to worry about. We got this. And so that's the face that you put on when other people come around. Even if you are heavily in debt, if you just lost your job, you would still leave the house every day at 7 o'clock and come back at 3 o'clock. Even if you didn't have a job, you would just disappear for 8 hours, just in case somebody was snooping around or anything like that. You had to keep this front going. And so again, when you get a monkey wrench in there, say you had a family member who had a mental illness, example, I had a family member who was autistic, and his parents didn't acknowledge him when he was born. Yes, obviously that was their son, But as he got older, and again, when you throw these grand parties, he was told to go in the basement and just not come up. He would go down there, and all the kids would go play in the basement anyway because that's where all the kids go. But he was like, I believe he was like in his teens, and he was just told to go into the basement and not come up, not to be seen. Like he would, go play in the corner somewhere with the kids. And I never understood that. Like I was like, why isn't he up there with the adults? Because he was so much bigger than us. He was so much bigger. He was stronger than us. We would wrestle with him, and he was like overpowering us. He was a real gentle person. He didn't hurt anybody. And I remember I wanted to get a drink, and so he took me up, and then he stopped at the stairs, at the top of the stairs, and he told me to go. Told me, go ahead. He would wait for me here. And I'm like, come help me because I can't open up the 2 liter bottle by myself. He's like, no, I can't go. And he was like visibly shaking because I remember this because, again, something traumatic, so I would remember it. And he was like visibly shaking that he couldn't leave the threshold of that door. And then I go, well, can you at least open the bottle for me? And he's like, no, no, no. He shook his head, no, 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 no. And so like I'm standing in the doorway, and then his mom walks by, and she sees him like standing at the doorway, and she yells at him like you would yell at a dog who peed on the carpet or something like that. She yelled at him to the point that I got scared, and he was crying, and I got so scared that I started crying. And my parents, they heard me. It's so weird when you're a parent and you hear like a child crying, you can tell which one's yours. And so my parents heard me crying, and they came running over and goes, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I couldn't say anything. I was just like, "I'm scared. I'm scared." And so they took me home, but I didn't understand later because they would explain it to me that they were just embarrassed that he was born that way. And not my parents. My parents were embarrassed, but like his parents were embarrassed that he was born that way. And they, to this day, like, well, I wouldn't say to this day because I kind of lost track, but as far as I know, that's how they treated him his entire life. Just as he was their son when no one was around. And when there were people around, he was just considered a babysitter or even just a lowly servant, I guess, is how they treated him. And, working in the mental health field, I get it. Like, I hear a lot of stories about that, how, the families wishing that these people didn't exist. And a lot of times they would just be there with no one to visit them, no one to talk to them. And so it's really hard because, obviously we all have issues. Don't believe me? Don't believe you're mentally unstable? Crying. Yeah, think about crying. It's the only physical manifestation brought on by your mind. You know, you're sad, you start crying. You're happy, you start crying. It's not a physical thing. I can hit my hand with a hammer all day long and I'll get angry. It's just the fact that your mind is telling you you should probably cry right about now. Oh God, rest in peace, Bing Bong. Oh God, now I'm about to cry. Anyways, going back to it. Yeah, that's right. You cry, guess what? You're mentally unstable. Boo hoo. I made a point. I deserve a zesty drink. So going back to the topic at hand, mentally mentally challenged family members is considered an Asian taboo. We don't talk about it. We shove it underneath the rug. Everything is fine. Bopenyang. And then there's the other one where if you're dating someone, and this scared the piss out of me as a kid because I didn't know any better. But if you are dating somebody, the way it's seen in our culture is if you are dating someone, that is it. That is it for you. Like, if you're a guy and you date this girl, guess what? You are gonna marry her because that's how things are. If you're a girl and you date a guy, that's your husband right there. They even refer to them as your wife or your husband. The moment you guys started dating. And I kind of carry that still mentality. When I first met Mary's dad, who when we just started dating, the first time I met him, I called him dad right away. Like, I was like, how's it going, dad? And that's how I was just raised, and so I still carry that portion. But as a kid, God, I was so terrified of of girls because of this. Like, I like you, but what if I don't like you 2 hours from now? It's like, this is me as like 8, 9 year old, like, oh, this is my boyfriend, this is my girlfriend. You know how kids play. And I took that shit seriously though, because I had like this girl who would like hold my hand, and then she's like, "This is my boyfriend." I'm like, "Don't you touch me, wench." Like, maybe I don't like you, and so that screwed me up, even growing up, and finally, like, again, as I got older, I go, "Oh, okay, that was all bullshit. Damn it, now I missed out." But again, no regrets, and so if you were dating someone. And obviously, like, maybe it is serious, maybe it's a one shot deal. But if you're dating somebody, especially if you're a woman, and you got pregnant, you know, out of wedlock, and then suddenly you're not with that guy anymore, and your parents know that you're pregnant, your family knows that you're pregnant, and because your family knows, guess what? Especially if you're Asian, everybody knows. But you're an embarrassment because you got pregnant and you're not married to this person. And so if you're living at home, again, when people come over, you are that secret shame and you need to be hidden. And so a lot of times girls who get pregnant out of wedlock would be told to stay in their rooms. And at certain extremes, they would be locked in their rooms. And then we would go, where such and such, because we knew. Everybody knew, but no one wanted to really acknowledge it. And so we'd go, where such and such, and oh, she's at work or she's out with friends. Everything's fine, everything's fine. She's not pregnant. What are you talking about? Again, Bob and Young. And so, like, even after you give birth, even after the girl gives birth, like, this baby just magically appeared immaculately, and then everything would die down. Obviously everybody would love the baby, and it would just go from there. But you wouldn't be acknowledged, as you would automatically, your status in the community would already drop to like a negative until this baby grows up, and then now you're judged by how you raise this baby. So then your status is tied to this, which again goes back to me not wanting to embarrass my parents, because then their status would drop. I mean, my dad's XP is probably like God mode in Rochester, because he's kind of a big deal. But at the time, you don't do anything to embarrass the family. And so again, girl gets pregnant, girl disappears for 9 months, and suddenly she reemerges with a baby, and everything is fine. Everything is fine until you know until she starts dating again, I guess, and then they're like, is she gonna get pregnant by this one now? That whole sort of thing, and then the gossip starts talking again. But uh, again, anytime you do something, your reputation is weighed against your parents, your upbringing, which then it's the worst social media ever. But that's just how I wanted to explain Asian taboos in the Laos community, at least. And I'm sorry to cut the episode short, but that's pretty much it. Really, that was my personal my personal experience. But Alex, I mean, you're definitely not an embarrassment to your mom or I, and you already know that. We're so proud of you. I mean, you read so much better than I did when I was your age, and you're not as athletic gifted, so we're not going to talk about that in front of everybody because you can't throw for the life of you. Anyways, oh god, you're not going to give me a good burial, are you? Anyways, I just want to say thanks for listening, everybody. Um, let's do some house cleaning again, right? So, social media, King Kato 81, pretty easy. Don't forget, I have merch up. I don't know why I have merch up, but support the show, or buy me a cup of coffee or a bowl of pho. Ooh, pho. I might have pho tonight. That sounds good. For those of you who've never had pho before, PHO, do it. Do it now. In fact, pause this right now and then go have some pho. And then come back and tell me about it if you've had it for the first time. All right. But we'll see you guys next week. Thank you, and goodbye.